evidence of his recruiting activities.
It has been quite a long time since we've been in contact due to various problems and restrictions. I was meaning to ask if you can help arrange for the training of a few brothers from abroad. Amongst them are non-Pakistani nationals. Please do let me know if the arrangements for their training can be made. Inshallah.
What was Abid Khan's role in Pakistan?
I think he was the talent spotter. He was the person who you went out to see in Pakistan. He would maybe interview you. He had the trust of Al-Qaeda. He is a facilitator. You don't get that trust. He had the trust of Al-Qaeda. Make no mistake about that one.
But Khan's father Sabir cannot accept his son is a terrorist.
Abid is a good person, right? He's my son, I can know, right? So he hasn't got a bad bone in his body, right?
Do you think Abid was capable of organising training for jihad in Pakistan?
He couldn't kill a fly on a hole,
We're not talking about killing flies, we're talking about sending people for jihadi training.
No, impossible. I don't think so. I think you had better people doing that right than Abid, right? Abid is nobody, right?
However, the authorities were onto Khan and ready to intervene. On June the 6th, 2006, he returned to the UK from Pakistan via Manchester Airport. Police officers were waiting for him. The evidence given in court presented Khan as a young Muslim wedded to the most extreme form of Islam, utterly dedicated to the cause of jihad and the ideology of Al-Qaeda. Abid Khan was eventually sentenced to 12 years in prison. Yet more evidence on his computer linked Khan to potentially the most devastating attack of the whole network. It was being set up in Canada. A year before his arrest, Khan had visited a group of young Muslims in Toronto who were now plotting a terrorist spectacular. The mastermind behind the plot was Zachariah Amara. Amara seemed an unlikely jihadi, baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church with an Arab father and a Cypriot mother. He wanted Canadian troops out of Afghanistan. He believed that by striking in Canada, he could force their withdrawal. Amara, like Khan, was looking to radicalize and recruit. He organized a camping trip and invited other young Muslims whom he thought might like to join his plot. One of those who attended the camp was Syed Khalid, a 19-year-old student whose parents moved to Canada when he was just 8. Russell Silverstein is Khalid's lawyer. He's known him for 3.5 years. When Khalid went to the training camp, did he have any idea of what lay behind it?
No. It was clearly planned with a view to fomenting Islamic awareness, but there was nothing specific said. There were no specific targets mentioned. There was no specific plan mentioned.
But jihad was mentioned, and the woods rang to speeches denouncing the West. However, most of those who attended had no idea of Amara's long-term goals. And Amara kept it that way. He only provided information on a need-to-know basis.
Amara had big plans. Amara had plans to detonate bombs. And at some point, and I can't tell you exactly when or how, Amara went to Khalid and got him interested in participating. Together, they were fomenting true terrorism, it would seem, here on Canadian soil.
Khalid had been a year below Amara at school. Amara recruited him to keep his own hands clean. Khalid was to do Amara's dirty work. What is Khalid like?
He's a very warm, loving fellow. That's my impression of him. And I say that not just from my meetings with him, but from my meetings with his family, there's a very tight bond between him and his siblings and between him and his father and his stepmother. This was a shock to everybody.
But he was a terrorist, and many people find that difficult to understand, the contradiction between the terrorist and the nice, warm, gentle human being.
Yeah, but you know, the danger here is that warm, gentle human beings get seduced into this kind of activity. You know, if they are suggestible, if there's something about them psychologically that makes them vulnerable to people like Amara, that's the real problem.
Amara had gathered around half a dozen key associates for his plan, but he'd no idea that the group had been compromised from the very start. One of the men tasked to organize the camp was actually a paid informant. And this is where you had your camp, is it?
We did a little exercise here, if you will. We were just walking in line, and whenever we would see a car coming, we would rush into the bushes and hide down and let them pass. And so we were practicing like getting out of the way and into a cover position as quick as possible.
But it was all a bit of a game, wasn't it?
Well, it was fun. I mean, there's definitely an element of fun in it, but it was in the context of training, right? So, I mean, training, anywhere you do it, they'll make it fun, right? They'll make it interesting and exciting.
Mubin Sheikh was perfectly placed to relay information back to the police, but shortly after the winter camp, the cell splintered. After that, Sheikh had little further contact with Amara. Amara, meanwhile, was determined to press on with his plans. He was charismatic and persuasive, and determined to convince other members of his cell of the need for action. Inside Khalid, he had a ready listener.
I think that his radicalization started with access to the internet, and CDs and discussions in Muslim groups. The question of just how far to go in the struggle that is jihad was something that I think evolved for him, and it was Amara, as far as I can tell, who pushed Khalid across the frontier from, if I may put it this way, lawful jihad to unlawful jihad.
Amara began to coach his cell in how to communicate secretly. He issued instructions in pre-recorded messages. In this particular one, he told them how to avoid detection.
Important messages. First of all, the pager. I expect you guys to keep the pager on you and to have it with you 24/7. You always have to check your messages. So always listen, and once you listen, just delete the message immediately. The other thing is, don't mention anything suspicious, like don't name any chemicals, just make it basic.
Amara eventually informed his accomplices that they were going to bomb not one, but 3 separate locations in the Greater Toronto area. His plan involved renting 3 vans using fake IDs. Each van was to be packed with homemade explosives. One would be parked outside the Toronto Stock Exchange, another outside the Toronto offices of CSIS, the Canadian equivalent of MI5, while the third would be driven out of the city to an unspecified military base. Amara boasted that his terrorist spectacular would eclipse the London bombings of July 2005. Now his main challenge was to get hold of the materials to build these bombs. At 22, Amara had no practical experience of how counter-terrorism worked, but he picked up enough off the internet to know that he had to be careful. He'd nominated this Islamic center as a meeting place. They suspected that they were under surveillance, that their emails were being intercepted and their mobile phones tapped. So to ensure maximum security, they devised a system of dead drops. Now this was the dead drop.